Hey everybody, we're live for another DoneJS contributors meeting. We missed last week. And we also just had technical issues. I'm still not super familiar with how to invite people, send people the link to a new YouTube Hangout, and then be able to start it later. It seems like you pretty much have to create it and start it at the same time and send people the link all at the same time. Kind of annoying. So we're still waiting for a few people to join. But while we do that, we can still start giving our statuses because they're all listed anyways on the contributors meeting page. So I'll start with mine. I worked on pretty much for the last week. I spent like a whole day doing CanJS issue triage. I helped make CanDefine inheritable with Adam from Bitowi. I did the To-Do MVC screencast on Wednesday. That went all right. We found some bugs, which I've since fixed those bugs. And for next week, I'm going to finish To-Do MVC's Getting Started Guide and probably make a chat Getting Started Guide. And there's just a whole bunch of topics I want to talk about, because now that CanJS is getting very close, there's just a lot of ideas and things that I want to decide whether we should do for 3.0 or not. So that's my status. Who wants to go next?
I volunteer. Hi everyone, I've been on open source again since Wednesday, and major contributions. I updated the legacy CanMap attributes 3.0 upgrade pull request so that it doesn't matter what order you steal it in. If you import before or after can model now, it will still properly apply attributes functionality to can model instances and subclasses. Let's see, off my place for the other one. So that's ready for PR review if anybody really cares. I've also got a, let's see, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, I did some teamwork with some other people just providing support. So can fixture, you can now use a get list type URL pattern when you use the fixture like with a URL and then like an entire fixture store. Previously, you could only do like, you actually needed to like put the ID property on in like a template at the end of the URL. Now you can do either one, and this feature was requested because that's usually how we set up Can Connect, so it matches it better. And there's a outstanding pull request on Can Connect right now coming in from an open source contributor who is attempting to fix the sorting problem with, I guess, like custom Can Connect modules. We had a little problem with, I think the real-time module wasn't ordering correctly, so it was causing test failures when we tried to do this. So I actually sent a pull request back to the contributor that he or she can merge in, and then that branch will then be mergeable back into CanJS Can Connect, and it would be awesome. I'm just pulling P1s off of the waffle board for the rest of the week. I should be on client work next week, so you may not see me again next Friday, but that actually still remains to be seen. So I leave it on to somebody else who wants to volunteer.
Cool. Prashant, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My status for this week is that I submitted a pull request for the Can Newton issue, where we needed to include this abort functionality in the Ajax call, and we returned a promise. So I have submitted a pull request for that, and if Brad, you and Justin, you could give me some feedback on this fix.
I have just one comment. I was looking at it before the meeting. Just please update the documents. I think the pull request itself looks fine.
No, it's not updated in the documents. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I could include that in the documentation. But does the fix look good? I mean.
Yes, I think the fix itself looks fine.
All right, all right. So I'll update the documentation and submit another pull request for that. And I'll also be working on another issue, which is in CAN list, and that is for the CAN list dot each iteration. So we have the each and the for each functionality in CAN list, and basically they should not allow us to iterate over properties that are not even initialized. So that's the issue that I'm going to work on next, and that's my status.
Great, thanks, Prashant. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Julian?
I've not that much. The only thing that we can talk, or that's what I did was a bug that contained the steel or isn't steel. So we had maybe someone see that we have that source map for our steel, and I share my screen for a short. So we had that source map in our steel, and that's because we are using when and the when polyfill for I think the SHR. There is a new version out, and they have the source map into their source. So maybe Matthew, we fix that the problem and point to the fixed version of 376. Sorry, of 375, and then there is no source map in their destination or in their dist folder, and so we can use that. Maybe.
Cool. I'll take a look at that.
Okay, that's for me.
Cool. Thanks, Julian. David, welcome back from Iceland.
I'm back. All right. So yes, well, I came back yesterday, and I actually maybe I can show that. I started with going through all my notifications, but I also, let me find it. I also made a quick analysis on the size of the default CanJS build, which one are probably going to get down a little bit by taking out things that aren't used from CanConnect and CanSet. Here is how this thing looks. One sec. No, that's not it. Sorry. I think this one is it. So basically, it just goes through the build file and shows how big each module is gzipped, and that way we could actually look at like CanConnect and CanStash and CanUtil are probably the biggest ones in the whole build, and it was nice to track down. I created a chart too somewhere. I thought it would be a cool feature for Steel to actually print that stuff out, or create like a JSON with a graph, so that people can look at and visualize it too, so that you can look at your build project and actually figure out what is eating all the space. I think that would be pretty helpful for a lot of projects. But yeah, for this, I'm right now working on taking out some of the things of CanConnect in the build and CanSet, which should be done shortly. I also briefly looked at, let me turn off my screen share. I also briefly looked at Sauce Labs. Yes, our Sauce Labs account, because we want to have tests running in all browsers. Finally, hopefully stable. I'm not really sure if I trust Advair, so hopefully we can get this done with Sauce Labs, which I'm going to be looking more into when I'm done with this, getting the size down a little bit. I think that's it for now.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, David. Kevin?
Yep, I can go next. Sure. So this week, the first thing I did is I went through all of the CAN stash docs and updated some broken links and stuff like that. And then I also added the docs for the new bracket expressions that I was working on for the last couple weeks. So those are live now. There's a few small things I still need to fix up, but that's mostly working. And then the other thing that I have been doing is going through all the CanJS 3.0 repos and getting them working on IE9, which has been super fun. So hopefully I'll have the last of those issues wrapped up today. And I can move on to something else.
Kevin, did you, in there, can you document using the bracket operator to look up values of kind of funny key values?
Yeah, I saw that you pointed to that with like the colon operator. So yeah, I can document that and confirm that that's working.
Yeah, I think that should be our new, like, we used to use escape for if people had dot or something like that, but I think that this is a much better solution.
Yeah, so I added a link to the one place where we used to show that escaping the dot. I added a link to the bracket expressions, but I'll also add in some docs showing using like a
we can
weird
prioritize that and kind of I would like to kind of pull back using slash, and in some ways I view 3.0 as like an intermediate, of course, between the beauty of 4.0, and we'll talk about that more later.
Sure.
Like I want to that's some of the stuff that would be good to scrape away.
Yeah, so I'll add docs for that.
Cool. Andrea, you want to go?
Sure.
Your last.
Yeah. So this is my first official week at Bitovi, and my first week on CanJS. And I've just been working off the bitdocs repo and working on styling a bunch of things, adding GitHub and Twitter buttons, adding some different styles for mobile, and then I'm working on setting up a demo so you can see the HTML, the JavaScript, and demo code right now. And I've been kind of splitting my time with some other things, so that's pretty much what I've done this week.
Cool. So what's like, just in terms of status, like when do you think that we should push out a new site? Like when would you have it?
All my stuff that I'm working on?
Yeah. When is it a good spot to start using?
Probably next week, Monday or Tuesday.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. Matthew?
Hey, so I updated migration guide, did can view import docs, which, by the way, are not showing up on the site right now. I think maybe, Kevin, when you did it earlier, one thing I do is I always remove my node modules and install it before pushing out. Because
it automatically does that.
I'll double check. It's not there anymore.
But it automatically does an npm install, so you need to make sure that if you want something documented, you got to change the package.json.
Okay. Make sure that's the latest version.
Yeah, to make sure you're pointing at the latest version. You could make it just automatically do a RM, and then we could make it. It takes forever.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways, I'll update that. Let's see, what else did I have? Did some Steel stuff. There was a couple bugs the last couple of days. Did releases on that. I have the table of contents plugin in its own plugin now. Haven't integrated. Just let me know Andrea, when you feel like you're done on the styles there, then I could get that into the site.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm actually open for work. I am taking a half day today, so I'll be gone here in like an hour. But if there's anything for like Monday that's higher priority, I can take anything.
So yes, there will be. So now that I went through all of our issues. There's, I think, you and Kevin maybe with Brad, and then with John and anybody else. There's all these P1 issues now that there's
lower number, higher importance. Is that how it works?
Lower number, higher importance. There's only P1s, but it'd be good to close all of these out for 3.0. There's just like a bunch of the remaining bugs, or things that are like would be really good to have in for 3.0. And I'm planning on working on these too next week, closing these out. But these would be helpful.
Okay.
If we could have 3 people doing these, if people can do like 2 a day, we could probably close it out in a week. All of the big issues remaining. Cool. All right, discussion topics. So let me have the form page open. So, look at discussion topics. All right. So, there's a bunch of things I want to discuss. The first one is shorthand getters. Getter and setter shorthand. I want to know people's thoughts on this. While I was writing to do MVC, I just was like, oh, okay. I ended up writing it like this, and it just feels really gross to write all of these getters like this all the time, especially because there is a getter-setter shorthand for yes modules. So I was thinking originally of adding this kind of shorthand syntax because I think getters are definitely, I think defining a type is very common. Especially now, it's extremely common, probably the most common. And then the next most common thing is you want a getter. And it would be nice to not have to write all of this every time. So the problem with this is, the problem with this is it doesn't support arguments. You'll actually get an error if you try to put in an argument. So things like asynchronous getter setters or trying to get the last set value, you can't actually describe this way. So an alternative syntax would just be to write get after, just do kind of the string form, space get, and we could go pick all of these up. And this is all right. This saves like some indentation and like 2 extra characters, but that's all that this one saves versus this one. So I guess I just want to have a discussion about ideas. This GS meets doesn't think it adds much value, but I don't know how much of this writing he's doing yet. I don't know what thoughts people have about this.
I think we're recycling a discussion that we had years ago when you were first working out the structure of what define maps would do. We actually did talk about this very thing. And I was of the opinion that I do like shorthand, and I thought that you really should have the longhand implemented first, so that people didn't get confused by it. Like once they got used to it, then it was okay to introduce shorthand. So that really hasn't, my opinion hasn't changed. But really, the answer to the question of has define map now been around long enough to make this better understandable, the answer to that may have changed. But I'm not qualified to answer that. I think you probably know better.
So I have an opinion too. I like the shorthand if it's the standardized shorthand. I don't really see the point of adding a shorthand if it's another custom thing that we're doing and that we have to document and explain to people. I don't think the benefit is worth it.
So, do you think the benefit is worth it here, though? Because we have to document that you can't put in arguments. Now, in fairness, people will get a type error if they actually try to put in arguments here. So they'll get a hard break.
I think I don't know. Like, what percentage of getters need arguments, anyways? I don't know. Maybe 20% or something. Like a lot. I think these types of getters are pretty common. So if it adds a little bit of value, it might be worth it. Yeah, if the error is not something we have to explain, then maybe it's okay. I'm not a big fan of DSLs either.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I see a little bit of value if doing it that way, and if the error message is handled for us about making it asynchronous or adding the asynchronous options or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you guys are all lame.
And I don't think it saves you a ton of characters over just using like the ES6 function shorthands with an object. So
What do you
you go
mean?
to your original way.
Yeah. This way?
No, sorry, the one that was the original.
This one? Oh. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think it saves you a ton over just doing get and then the parentheses instead of get function all that. So like the ES6 function shorthand.
It saves you 2 characters and 2 lines of code for every getter. This does. You don't have to write out function, or you don't have to write out function.
No, he's saying you don't
have to write out function. You can just do get
function.
and then parentheses and.
You can still use ES6 function shorthand for the compressed version too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but not in browsers that don't support it. IE9 supports this. Just you can actually just start. Like we can actually write this in our code bases that are not transpiled.
Yeah.
Starting like today. You know what I mean? That's why this is so nice to me. This is supported in all browsers we support.
Yeah. So I think that's worth saving the 2 lines if it's this format and we don't have to do anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most browsers that like developers are going to use to see our website support just most things now, right? So unless you want to get the IE9 using developer that our demos don't work, I don't think it's use whatever you want.
I think I'm leaning towards this mostly. Another reason is just because if people try to write getter setters like this, well, we really want it's natural for CanDefine to kind of take those over and do its own thing with them.
My question is, what if you're doing the actually I think this should only be a define map thing, maybe. Like you have to. This is a. Huh?
Why not define list? You can have expando properties on the list.
No. I meant one of those 2, not the regular CanDefine form, the lower level one.
Oh.
Like maybe this has to be a behavior that inherits from define map, define list.
Okay, cool. All right.
So actually, I have another question about this too.
Yeah.
What happens if you need to set like something other than the getter? I mean, you can just basically put a get and a set in the shorthand and.
Yeah, that's it.
Not set serialize or anything like that.
Nope. You have to go the other way. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why this would work with that. Is you could do like saving space serialize, and then you would just define a non-serializable property. You just do saving space serialize false, or you could do saving space value, and just define a value straight away without having to do the nested object. So this one's definitely a little bit more flexible. But all right.
I think the object is flexible enough. If you want the flexibility, just use the longer way.
All right. Let's go. Next one. Next topic. Is from Cash. I just wanted to have a better name for this. So this is fall through cache is there's a feature I'd like to have before we release because like I just know it's a kind of it's a hole in our APIs that's really important is to let people know that a list is loaded from the fall through cache or it's loaded actually it's like actually represents like the real data on the server. So the property that I was thinking about, it's actually going to be a method until maybe some other things we maybe could add it as a property, but can define map doesn't make that super easy currently. But really the important thing to me is the property name for this discussion. So I was just thinking to-dos is from cache. Like is cached doesn't make sense because you could think like is this to-dos in the cache with is cached. So I'm thinking is from cache. I don't really have a better name.
It sounds good to me. Is from cache.
Okay, fine. Moving on. Just want to bring these up. The next thing I want to talk about is Julian, this cache lifetimes. What was this? Oh, this. So the problem here was, yeah, there's an interesting problem. I forgot. Did I summarize this somewhere? I need to summarize this. Actually, I'm not remember what this is. This is basically like this is the save case race condition. I don't know. I'm gonna skip talking about this because I don't remember what the hell I want to talk about. Okay, big topic, which I want to propose is now this is going to be some serious business, but to me it's almost worth it. Is I've been thinking about like the last big change that I really want to make would like to make for 3.0, like some semi-breaking change, would be to make it so that batch never needs to be called. Right? I think this is a big, tricky sore spot in CanJS that like we have to explain to people is like, hey, if you want good performance and you're making a bunch of changes, you have to batch your requests. Now we could start doing that for people automatically. And what we would do is just in between request animation frames, we would catch all the series of events, and then at the end of a request animation frame, we would we would basically call stop batch, if you will, and then let all of those batches out. They would update the DOM, and then that would be perfect timing for when the browser was going to do a repaint anyways. So we could do that. The problem is like a decent amount of work is going to have to be done in terms of us rewriting some tests possibly, because that means that all of the events are not going to fire synchronously. They're going to fire asynchronously. Now we could perhaps let the events fire synchronously and then maybe make the DOM update asynchronously. But then that's just there's cascading flow problems with that. The easiest thing is just to make batch, stop batch on request animation frame. The problem, we could also have a flush, like we could have a can.batch.flush, which would flush all the events as what would have happened previously. So then all of our synchronous tests, you would just put a batch.flush right before you wanted to inspect a DOM and see all of the changes. And we could make a legacy mode that would behave the old way, but this would be a way to remove what I see as one of the, if we're trying to make it, people fall into the pit of success, making them call start batch and stop batch and when to do that is really tricky. So this would be a big change, but I think we could account for it. And I think with like maybe a week or so of extra effort, maybe a week or two, we could make this happen. And the cost is that how long would it be? It's going to be if we don't do this now, it's going to have to be basically a 4.0 where this happens, because you're really talking about like so many tests are going to change their behavior. So it's like we do it now, or we do it like a year and a half from now, or 2 years from now, is the way I see it.
So it might mean that users need to update the tests of their projects too, right?
Yes, or they could put it in legacy mode. You could have a legacy mode, and then they would have to do the same kind of changes to their tests and just call flush if they had, if they just had a test that depended on synchronous behavior.
But it might not just be tests though. I mean, it's possible they're depending on synchronous events in their actual code.
It's possible, but that would be bad code. But then they would call flush in those circumstances as well. They would change. They'd make a change, and then they'd call flush.
Oh, so if you expect it to be synchronous, you just call flush, and it'll
run all the events then, right then.
Is there any SSR applications?
There might be, in just that SSR would I think what we can make it is so only when there's a registered event is it actually going to request animation frame. So no, I think if request animation frame is trapped by SSR, I think it should be fine. If we made it so it's always request animation frame, yes, there would be a problem because it would be an infinite loop, but we can make it so it's only, it's not noisily doing anything if there are no events to be dispatched.
How much effort is it to do this development outside of the tests, like to do the work?
It's always been so, like even as far back as like CanJS 2.0 or something like that. Like I purposely designed it so that this was possible. So like there's util batch. Where's batch event? Where's batch in here? What's we get? So like you always were able to do this, which would effectively be the same thing. Start a batch at the end of one request animation frame, then at request animation frame, then call stop and do a hard stop.
Is that what we're gonna do internally? Let's just do that.
The only difference is we'd have to make it so it doesn't do this exactly. If we could do this, but then there would be that problem with can zone because this is kind of like an infinite loop, right? But if we made it so that only when there is an event does it set this up, that's all I think would have to do.
Okay. The reason I ask is it would be useful to know how many tests are actually going to break.
Like every test. Like literally almost every test, except for the asynchronous ones. Huh?
Like 3,000 tests almost, something like that.
Yes.
If we do this, we might as well move the test to Mocha because it has much better async handling. That will make it a lot easier to do like all, because they're all going to be asynchronous now, right?
No, we would in the test you would call flush to make them synchronous.
Yeah, that would be the.
You want to do that in every test?
Huh?
You want to do that in every test though? Just seems.
Well, every test, but
I would go with how it's supposed to be used, and that means not calling flush every time.
Yeah, it
depends on the test.
You just would need to call stop and start then if we were doing QUnit. When a lot of our tests are like do something. The problem is really going to be like you would need to still call flush or you would need to call some callback because the real problem is now you aren't going to know that the DOM has updated. Like all the stash tests is going to be where the big problem is because you wouldn't know. You need to kind of register. You would do one of two things. Either you call flush and then you know the DOM is updated, because it's been alerted of the events, or you would register, like you could call can batch stop allows you to pass a function in that lets you know when the next batch has finished. So you would say, okay, when the next batch is finished, call this event, and then I know the DOM has been updated. So that would be the other way to do this. Is like either way you're adding something to every test, with a few exceptions. If it's a simple test where it's like testing observables, where they're like, okay, I'm making a change and I'm seeing that the event handler is fired off, that you would just have to call stop and make it an async test. But we really are talking about, like, you know, a huge amount of test changes.
I say do it. If you don't have to explain batch stop and start, that's good. Like, most stuff should be asynchronous anyways.
Yeah, I agree. And I also agreed with David that if we can switch to Mocha, that would be awesome also.
Well, that's
what would Mocha provide that
Way better async test handling.
when you say that, like, what do you mean?
Similar to write
just
async
all that
tests.
stupid start-stop stuff. And
But isn't that, I mean, how is that any different than just writing, like, async test and then just calling start when it's done? I mean, we can bring this topic offline, but I guess I'd just like to understand, like, what does that actually mean? Because to me,
you get better error handling, and you can just return a promise and things
but
like
promises,
that. It's
yeah, promises wouldn't get us much. I mean, I'm hesitant to switch to QUnit off of QUnit mostly because I just want to limit the amount of work that we have to do. If you could prove to me that it's actually, like, there's going to be, yeah, you just show me that, like, what we would really gain offline, and then I'm open to it. I want to. This is going to be a big enough change. I don't want to change our entire test infrastructure across, I don't know, 20 projects. We don't have to. All right. Well, maybe what we can do is a spike, and maybe someone can get a week and go for it and just see what the results are and if it's worth it. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's like, if we don't, because this is just like a foundational part of our infrastructure, it's just like we either have to do this now or we have to do it, like, a year or two from now. It's got to be like a 4.0, and then it's going to be a big breaking change across all. If we want this whole thing where it's like, hey, everything can kind of play with everything else, well, this is one of those things that kind of violates that. It's kind of like when if we change CAN observations API. It's like, if you change every event system from going synchronous to asynchronous, that's like backwards compatibility is really going out the door for everything.
Yeah, now is the time to do it, because we're supposed to be able to update each project individually to 4.0 on their own timeline or whatever, which it would be impossible to do that.
This would be breaking changes for everything.
It'd be a breaking change for every, a major.
Not can construct.
Be a major version bump for every project. So now is the time to do it. I think.
Well, that's why I was thinking about this yesterday, and it was just like, it came to that same realization. All right, so next topic, can connect. I was just thinking, I think Matthew or David and I talked about this, is we might make a can.
Yeah, I kind of started on that already too.
I was thinking calling
let's
it
talk about
map. I don't know if you had another term for that module, but just so everybody else knows, it's basically like can. Think of it as it's like supermap, but it's not, doesn't have a fall through cache, and
local storage.
Well, yeah, it doesn't have a caching strategy, and it will come with real time, but that's about it then.
Why?
Mostly because fall through cache, I think this is just like this kind of similar realization of, like, where are the things that people are really going to struggle with, and is it worth, like, as much as I love my fall through cache and I spent a lot of time and I really, like, want to get that right, is it worth shoving that down everybody's throats, especially when like you might not want things stored in local storage, and if you don't have your set algebra set up perfectly, it creates big problems. And I think partially it makes me think that there's it's better to start people with the basic map and expand from there, I guess. And I think the nice thing is what we could do is we could make it so that I think, David, if you're working on this, we should definitely talk, because I think we can make it so you could do basic map and then you pass in your options. But then if you wanted, you could get the fall through cache behavior, and you should just be able to weave it on around the basic map if you wanted. Like, we can make this work.
Well, I think part of the idea was to not ship it with the
the core would not come. Well, to me that doesn't even matter. It's more like what are the guides gonna walk people through using? And I don't know if Supermap is the right. I don't know if Supermap is what people should learn first. I think basic map with real time, or maybe we even call it real-time map. And this is just a helper function, and then you can add other things to it, the more complex things. Or maybe there's a basic map, and maybe what you could do is maybe there's just basic map, and then you could, if you wanted to add real-time, you do real-time, and then you do fall-through cache, right? Like, we can make these already exist, presumably should already work.
So we're going to show them building their own connection.
Well, in the basic guides, I think you would just use either we have it real time is in base map, or we could show them just doing this to add. Hey, you want to add real time behavior? You take your base map, you just wrap that connection with real time, and you're done. Oh, you want fall through caching? Okay, there you go.
So to me, it seems like this is kind of trying to solve the same problem that DoneJS Connect model solved, the like verbose, the thing that lists out all of the actual behaviors, so that you can modify the ones that you want more easily. Would it make sense to just ship like a list of the basic behaviors and let people use the regular Connect?
I think the list of behaviors is very long, and it's kind of verbose if you want to do all of that yourself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Couldn't we just export that list from one of the, so that people could import it and call it themselves? Just say like, import basic behaviors from Can Connect.
We could, but what would that like? So that would be constructor can map, can ref, constructor store, data callbacks, data parse, data URL, and maybe real time. So there's like those 6. But what would they do? It would look like connect, and then it would be like connect dot base connections or something, base behaviors.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you could do that, or you could concat yourself or something. I don't know. I like this more than using Can Connect. Can Connect in this was just to me like a stopgap. This was always like the real goal, is this kind of composition.
So then if we did this, would we get rid of Supermap?
No, I think Supermap will still be there. I just think it's what the guides are gonna show.
So who would use Supermap?
Huh?
Who's gonna use Supermap still?
I don't know. Maybe it does become deprecated if it's as simple as this.
So wait. What's in? So base map is. I guess my concern is like the more private stuff that doesn't make sense to users. Like all that stuff is included in this, right?
Yeah. Constructor, can map, constructor store, data callbacks, data parse, data URL, callbacks once.
And real time.
Huh?
And real time, right?
Well, maybe real time. We can have real time. Real time can be its own thing. Oh, and callbacks cache if you have a caching mechanism. That's the interesting thing. Like, yeah. In order to add fall through cache, you actually need the callbacks cache. That's not built in. Although we could make that work. We could make callbacks cache built in. It just needs to run it. It needs to, I think, be added at the end. That's the problem. Because it basically takes whatever successful response and then makes that go to the cache. So the cache gets updated whenever, like, oh, you've got new items, or you just update an item, make sure you go update the cache. And that's what that does. So it kind of needs to connect at the end. I don't know.
Yeah, the ordering is a problem. It almost makes sense to me just to do the interface thing, like go all the way with it.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that before 3.0. To me, that's like something we can, like, to me, that's something that we can easily add and is compatible as we extend, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just want like an easy to get started guide for 3.0, and that's why I think that like just having some kind of base map without really the fall through cache is very useful. So
could we just remove the fall through cache from Supermap and make it easier to add it back? And just
then it's not
continue using
super.
Super is just a word, right? I mean, it could. It's not as super as it is now.
I think the direction we need to head is we need to head towards is that everyone makes their own connections eventually. Maybe not right now.
Yeah, agreed.
So I wouldn't mess with Supermap. To me, I think Supermap should eventually be deprecated.
Good. Yeah, that's fair.
The reason why I also like base map is because then this kind of is like its own, like it's kind of like a behavior of behaviors. Presumably, you could also add things inside here. The base map could weave onto that connection.
So maybe base map's not the right. If we eventually could make something smaller than base map, maybe base is the wrong word.
Yeah, I think what it really is just something that you can use with like a can map type. That's really it's really can map and things around it to connect to your normal data URL. I mean, we could call it like.
Well, I know one project that doesn't use data URL, so this is not really useful to them.
Yeah, but 90% do, and we're talking about like the guide here. I can't stress enough like what I think is useful when you're designing these. You're designing an experience when you're going through the guides and things like that, and it's really useful to like pick the main. You know, like, hey, the main stuff you got to do, the main stuff that you want working, like that is relatively easy and straightforward. And sure, we have all this extensible things, but I don't think like fall through cache is something that people are coming and being like, oh, I really need fall through cache. Real time, to show real time being set up really easy is, I think, very nice. I think that's a big, powerful part of the chat guide in DoneJS, and I want to keep that. Fall through cache is like, I never really explain that to people, and people think it's cool, but it's like takes so much understanding to get why it's beneficial, and it doesn't work in all contexts. So I guess I'm saying that's my goal, is making our guides friendly to begin. And I guess I'm willing to trade a little bit of like clue if it means like, oh well, there's base map and there's super map and there's all these other maps. Well, I'm fine with that, because in the beginning all you want to see is like, oh, this is very easy to set up a model-ish behavior. I don't know. I'll make an issue and we can start a discussion. Or David, if you've been working on that, you create the issue. Mm-hmm. And you can guide discussion. Okay. Final thing, why and homepage, just ideas about that. that I had, which is I don't know. I was talking about this a little bit, Toby. I actually really like this. Not this incarnation, but I like the idea of having just one little graphical thing that kind of represents CanJS and kind of it's about its evolution and slow and steady progress toward better and better technology and better tools wins the race over a long period of time. And that's kind of what I'm going through eventually in my. These are mostly just notes. Why CanJS? It's really about longevity is the big thing I'm pressing, and then I'm going to also hit at some point just the technical aspects. But the main driver of it is like the spirit of CanJS. It's that continued progression. You shouldn't have to rewrite your entire application to pay through technology every 3 years. Any thoughts about this? We kind of talked about this last week, but David wasn't here. All right, I'm going to assume it's perfect, and you love this imagery. Cool.
It is.
What'd you say, Matthew?
Said it is. Perfect.
Okay, so Kevin, you want to talk about the error warning messages?
Yeah, I think we should talk about it at some point. I don't know that it doesn't have to be right now, but we can.
Let's do it right now. I think it's a good idea to have links out of error messages, error warnings, to documentation that give more information than you can really put into a console.warn. My only question was where do we just put those? How? My question is how.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this too. The only idea that I had is create a module that helps do this, like a bit log or something like that, and then in the repo for that, we list the error messages, and then the other projects would use that to call their log messages.
Well, no, there's already a canutil log. There's already a logging thing in canutil.
What does the utility have to do?
What does what now?
What does
Oh,
the
okay,
log
yeah, you didn't know
have to
about this.
do? So
Cool.
it needs to have an index of error message to link.
Yeah, or error codes or something to.
I mean,
link.
can it?
Some type of convention, yeah.
Can we just have a? I think the simplest thing. Look at links work, by the way.
Yeah.
So can we just have I think the easiest thing would just be have a you could just do a type def or something, error type, and you would just do your can compute some type of error name.
Okay.
And right, this is the title. You do no name or something. I don't know, maybe the compute no getter setter, and then you could even put out the full. You could make the title if you wanted, but you could do no getter setter, and then you could just make this a whoa. You could just make this the parent of this that page. Error messages. So it wouldn't actually show up. Now we could do it one of two ways. We could make it just everything is a child of the error message page. So if someone clicks, we always just put out a link, error message, go to error message, and then we could just do, hash thing, whatever the thing would be, and we just make sure we console log this.
Well,
right, and then people can just click on it and you go right to that.
okay.
And this is all you do is if you have an error that you're doing, you just do this and then you put out information.
But what happens in the code? You call.
In the code, you need to console log this.
So you console log the actual error maybe, and
the error and go to error message.
can you just console log can compute no getter setter, and then we have a utility that converts that to the actual URL?
We could maybe make that happen.
So are you saying that they would not be on their own pages? They'd all be listed under this error message?
They have their own pages the same way that like everything has their own page. Like all of these have their own page.
Yeah, I know they do. But you use the hash bang. That's what I was confused about.
Oh, sure, you're right. You're right. You would do it. Then you could do it like this. Yeah, it would go to its own page. Yeah. So it would.
I think ideally we would add to can util log, like some type of, I don't know, log link or something, and you just give it the name, the document.js name, and then it converts that into that, basically.
Yeah. There is I did want to add to document.js or bitdocs like a C. I think you could write like, you know, C can compute. Or like, you know, this is very common where you have these very related things like can route as this URL method. And it would be nice to have like a related section somewhere that would be like, you could easily, in can URL, you could be like C can stash helpers route URL helper or whatever. You could do these kind of things and mark it up, and then the nice thing is it would be really nice if it does two-way. So it's like, sure, in here it's going to put C can route blah blah blah, but if you have it in just one of them, well, it's still going to do it in both places. So that if I went to can route route URL or whatever, then it would also say, hey, maybe you should see, this demo was broken. I gotta fix that. Maybe I thought I had these working. Let's check it out. It would link back to can route, so like the kind of C's would work bidirectionally. And this way you could do the same. That way errors you could do the same kind of thing. Like, oh, if this error was created by can define set, then you could, you know, you could see that when you're looking at can define map set method. You're like, oh, see also this error.
Cool.
Cool. Anything else? All right. Thanks, everyone. Long meeting today, but we got through a lot of weighty stuff.
We lost Julian at some point.
It was long. I appreciate everybody's input, and I'll see you all next week.